Introduce yourself.
Mark Radford. I'm 54 years old, played for the Seattle SuperSonics from 1981 through 1983, and then the now defunct Seattle SuperSonics and San Diego Clippers, who are now the LA Clippers, in '84.
So you're in the NBA for how many years again?
2 years, and then like a quarter of the time with the Clippers. They end up releasing me and cutting me. That's what they call it. Wasn't voluntary.
Okay. Do you have, or even like still talk to today, like any friends that you've met in the NBA?
You know, that was so long ago. I'll run into them at a game, see them, but it was so long ago when it was in Seattle, so I live in Portland now. Most of the people I talk to are most of the Trailblazer ex-players. We did a lot of fundraising because I live here in town, so we do a lot of fundraisers and help with the Portland Trailblazers more than the Seattle SuperSonics. They don't even exist anymore, other than the Oklahoma City, whatever they are, the Oklahoma City Thunder was changed from the Seattle SuperSonics. So most of that connection was lost. But a lot of the guys still live in Seattle. I just don't make it enough to see them.
Okay. Did you live anywhere before being in Seattle?
Yeah, I grew up here in Portland, so I went to high school at Grant High School, just right down the street. I grew up, let's see, 8 blocks from here. So, kind of a local person, didn't venture too far. But in my 5th through 7th grade, I moved to Seattle and really began to love basketball when I lived in Seattle, and then moved to Portland in my high school for my high school year. But because I was in Seattle, I went to all the Sonics games and really learned to love basketball and watched a lot. And it was somewhat ironic that I ended up playing for the Sonics and playing with some guys who played when I watched in grade school. So it was surreal to actually go play for them.
Okay, that's cool. What college did you go to?
I went to Oregon State in Corvallis.
Let's say, cool.
Yeah, 78 through 81.
Okay, so how was playing basketball back? Like, you've been playing it for like almost probably like all your life now.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever really think like you'd be in the NBA, like when you were younger or anything?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think most kids who start playing basketball, like if you asked Jonah the same question, he probably said, "Yeah, I think I can play in the NBA." I mean, you had that dream, and how realistic that dream is. It really doesn't make a difference. It's the matter of fact that you can dream, and that's all. That's how you aspire to, whether you're going to do in the film industry. You know, you have this picture of how you see yourself 5 years from now and 10 years from now, and when that picture starts to become clearer, you realize that this is in fact what I want to do, and I am pretty good at it. So as you start, at least from a basketball standpoint, once you start playing against better players, and you find out against college players when you're in high school, and when you're in high school you're playing against college, and college when you start playing against pros, you realize, wow, I am pretty good. And so that dream becomes more and more realistic. But it is a difficult profession, no question. Is there? The percentage of high school players that make it to the NBA is so minuscule, and the number of college players that make it to the NBA is tiny. So it's not an ambition or a career I would choose for my kids. But if you love it and you dream it, you might as well pursue it. And as long as you get an education, which is a little bit different now. When we went to school at Oregon State, most people finish 4 years, you got a degree, and you finish college, and you came away with something if you didn't make the NBA. But now most guys don't even finish college, they just go straight to the NBA, and that's just the way it is, but it wasn't that way before.
Okay, cool. How did your life really change joining the NBA? Like, was there any like major like change in your life?
Yeah, the biggest difference was the way people treated you. Now that you're professional, it was a little different. Whereas before, people recognized you and knew you, but all of a sudden you're just a much higher profile. Everything you did was watched, more scrutiny, and so that was a little different. All the attention you got, obviously getting paid, was different to actually get some money. In college, you don't get any money at all, and it's just you're living in poverty for the most part. And so it was. Those were the two factors, but the amount of time you spent on it, the inability to really understand how the world worked, is part of the problem with professional athletes. Is that they receive a lot of money, but they don't have a lot of time to understand how the business world works and finances work. So it's a difficult proposition.
Okay. When you're in the NBA, was there any infighting or like rivalries between the team and like your own teammates?
Oh, good point. That's a good question because it is that's something that goes through high school, college, and the pros. I mean, even though you're teammates and you have one goal, you're fighting each other for playing time, starting position. You start, I don't. So it's something that you don't just get thrown on the NBA. You're used to it. Through high school and college, you kind of get used to the fact that how you work together in a cohesive group, yet compete against each other. So we did have fights, and we did have players that didn't like each other. But especially at the professional level, you're there to do one job, you get paid to do it, and most players learn and adapt. So when the horn goes off and you're on the court, you behave differently than you do in the locker room, perhaps. So you have to. And I would say the same thing. And if you ask soldiers in war, they may not like each other, but once the guns start firing, they're all one cohesive unit.
Wow. Okay. Did you ever make any flagrant fouls?
Yeah, it was a lot rougher then. So the game has changed. When we played, I mean, we'd have fights all the time. It was pretty commonplace. And if you go back even 20 years before I played, it was much rougher, much more violent, more physical. Then several outbreaks took place in the NBA. Fans got fights with the players, and one guy got nearly killed with a punch. And the league started to change it. And they decided that, if we're going to be on television all this time, we can't have this much fighting. And so they started changing the rules. So a lot less flagrant fouls and a lot less violence on the game than it used to be. It used to be a lot more violent in the game.
Wow. Did you ever make any game-changing plays while playing basketball or anything?
No, you know what? Unfortunately, the game-changing plays I made were, last second. I never really had the career where, God, we won with this last second shot, like you see Damian Lillard hit the other day. Unfortunately, we were in my senior year in college. We were undefeated till the very last game, so we were number one in the nation and undefeated, and so. There was a lot of games we dominated. We're really a dominant team, but it's strange how life works. The thing you remember most are the negative things. The thing that happened, you lose the last game of the season, and you lose. So not enough game changing. We were good. I was very good, obviously, but none of these Damian Lillard things you kind of hold your hat on to. Unfortunately, I wish I had something great to tell you, but I don't.
Yeah. Well, what was your best moment in the NBA?
It's funny you should ask because I'd never seen myself play. Because when you're playing, you play. You're not going home and watching the game. We didn't have that capability as much. But my brother brought a tape, and it's been, so what is it, 81? That's almost 30-some years ago. So he brought a tape, and I got to watch a game. And it was back in 82. And back then, you only had CBS televised games. So now you have TNT and ESPN, ESPN1, ESPN2. I can't even name all the channels that would show basketball games. But back then you had one channel and you only showed one game a week. And so it was a pretty big deal. Everybody watched this one game, and we're happy to be undefeated, and we're playing the Milwaukee Bucks, and the starting guard got hurt, and the coach calls me to play. And so I ended up with 18 points in this one game. So it was kind of a big highlight because everybody in the nation watched this one game, and so everybody was able to see me from all the people I ever knew. Everybody able to see me play this one game. So that was probably the biggest highlight in the NBA for me, to be able to have this one game. But no game-winning shots.
No.
But we did win the game.
Yeah. So Mark, are you married?
Yeah, married, couple kids. Yeah,
Yeah,
15
kids.
and 18-year-old.
Did your wife or anything ever affected your career, or did you meet her afterwards?
I met my wife afterwards, yeah.
Yeah,
Which is good, because when you're meeting people while you're an NBA player, it's so unrealistic, the expectations people have and the way they treat you. So it was almost better. The career was over. I was just more of a typical person versus some person on a pedestal. So
Yeah.
it worked out better.
Yeah. So, how your life changing going into the NBA? So how did it afterwards? Like.
Yeah, it's difficult afterwards, because you got a lot of attention, you've got a lot of free time, you've got a lot of money, and all of a sudden you've got you got to figure out what you're going to do next. You've done something and you focused on your whole life on one thing, and all of a sudden you have to change. It's very difficult. It's a big transition for a lot of NBA players, but fortunately I only played a very short season for a short career. But those guys play 18 years and they can't adjust. It's very difficult. So, but it was hard. It was very hard to get over the fact that you're no longer an NBA player and you have to go back into society and become just a regular person who has to go get a job. And it was very humbling.
Okay. What do you do now?
I'm a realtor. I've been a realtor for almost 30 years. So.
Cool. Do you ever still play basketball?
Yeah, my daughter's a freshman at Grant. She's a basketball player. My son played a little bit, so just playing with them. But they have this tournament every 4 years I play in. That's about it, but nothing. It doesn't pay the bills anymore. It's very dangerous, very, very physical. So you got to be in tip-top shape constantly. If you're playing all the time, you're used to it. But going from not playing and playing, difficult.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
Okay.
Good.
Yes, we're good.
Good questions.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, very good.
Well,
Yeah.
sorry.
No problem.
You get a shiver in the dark, it's raining in the park, but meantime, sound of the river, you're stopping your